Corruption of all kinds disrupts the search for merit, right? That is what corruption effectively is the breaking of a system that claims to be the pursuit of merit in favor of other objectives like enriching some particular constituency or something like that. When something becomes corrupt, the thing people do not necessarily intuit is that it becomes often very powerful in protecting itself, but also very easy to beat, right? If you have a corrupt department that is supposed to be innovating things, then it will do a poor job because it's really, feathering somebody's nest or advancing somebody's political interests. And those things come at a cost to doing what it is supposed to be doing. This is true for fields as well. Academic fields, as they become corrupt, become surprisingly easy to beat, right? Now, it is not surprisingly easy to beat them and get credit for it. Right. But if the point is you want to, if predictive power is the purpose of the advancement of science, it is possible to generate more predictive power than a corrupt field. The more corrupt the field it is, the easier it is to beat it in this regard. You can outthink it.
Yep.
And so what you get is a dynamic. As corruption takes over something, you have to find a reason to dismiss people who are finding the thing that is corrupt easy to beat, right? So you dismiss them on the basis that they are kooks and only a fool cannot see through them. That's a typical one, or that they are corrupt in their own right, that the corruption is really on the part of the people. Basically, the point is you demonize the fringe, right? Now, the problem is, for anybody who's tracking actual predictive power, the fringe will surprisingly keep being the place where the reality is spotted first and carefully argued, and the mainstream, the corrupt thing, will keep being embarrassed by those on the fringe, right? So
but the fringe will also be the home of spectacularly wrong takes,
right?
Which are easily pointed to as evidence that therefore so must be all of what is not mainstream.
Right. And so you will get all kinds of shell games like, okay, so-and-so on the fringe was right about X, but for the wrong reasons, right? You'll get little excuses like this. And the point is, okay, that can be true on any one thing, but it doesn't generate a track record. If you are repeatedly right, and you're not repeatedly right by virtue of predicting everything and then claiming those places where you were right, which is one trivial way you could technically accomplish something. But if you are in general more right than wrong, and significantly more right than a field that has become corrupt and therefore isn't all that interested in being right or all that capable of getting there, then you are a threat, because over time the question will be, well, okay, if the fringe is inherently kooks, then why is it telling me things that turn out to be true again and again and again? So the fringe must never be vindicated, even if the mainstream is forced to accept some new principle.
Pushed into, we're vilified, we're named as people on the outside because they arrived at conclusions that didn't fit. It's not.
And I can't find a seconder usually when I propose this, but I don't care. I don't need a seconder. My own opinion is enough for me, and I claim the right to have it defended against any consensus, any majority, anywhere, any place, any time. And anyone who disagrees with this can pick a number, get online, and kiss my ass.
No representation is made that the quality of legal services to be performed are greater than the legal services provided by other lawyers. I'm Harry Steele. You found the Backstory Podcast, number 120, and we pose the question, who is John Gray? Mr. Rip, how are things at Fairhope?
Very good. Beautiful day. Just went down to the show downtown. Friday, they announced that it was going to be rained out, and just about the time they announced that, at 12 o'clock, the sun came out. Everybody opened their tents, and it's been sunny ever since. So it was a beautiful day today and tons of people down there.
Well, so yesterday, I went down there. I was there around noon, I guess, and I don't know how many people there were, but my goodness. They were running shuttles from way out at the Fairhope Satellite Courthouse. Do you know that?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there was no parking anywhere. Tow trucks hauling people's vehicles off.
Yep.
They have
only if you knew the back roads. There's a cubby holes you can get all the way up there.
We're not into giving away our secrets, Paul. Not our secret fishing
really.
spots or where to park during Mardi Gras. None of that. Okay, that's not what this podcast is about. We're about, and I know that was a long explanation there, but boy, you talk about somebody that never thought that they would see themselves on the outside. Moi.
Yeah.
Right? You think I said, hey, I think I'm gonna go do a podcast and peeve everybody off? No. I mean, it was, y'all watch how corrupt this place is. I'm going to tell you about it as it happens, and we are going to predict, major malfunctions and major scandals. Didn't think it would be Pritchard, but when you have an ethics commission that does nothing, when you got guys like John Gray running around, and let's talk a little bit about him real quick, okay? So he's the founding partner of Strategy Public Relations.
Right.
He apparently worked for Walt Disney World.
I don't know.
Creative entertainment works on such as things as The Little Mermaid, The Lion King, the opening of Euro Disney. So,
I don't know, but ever since he came on the scene, that people have just let him run amok with free advertising. Well, no, I mean, seriously, that goes back quite some time with Elliott and the school board. I mean, it would be interesting to know how many of these side contracts that he has and how many may have even be a conflict with each other.
So, Paul, I know
that there's people on the school board that have asked to break away from him at every single meeting that's come up, I believe.
Okay, so this is the Baldwin County Public Schools webpage. Are you seeing that?
Yep.
Okay, and I'm about to show you another page real quick. And
I tell you who really keeps up with this too is Baldwin County Citizens for Accountability. That Facebook site, they really keep up with the school finances and post it. So if you're interested, folks, you can always go there and catch on them too.
Or you can watch Backstory Podcast, and I'll show you right here. So the fourth line from the bottom, or fifth line from the bottom, 221200 Strategy Incorporated. You see that other purchase services there. $9,500 a month.
And how many of those puppies does he have?
Well, that's a monthly recurring.
No. What I mean is, how many other people does he have under contract on a monthly basis?
Oh, none of our business. I'm just telling you what he was supposed to be doing for the Baldwin County school system, right? So today, right. John ranks among the top political consultants in Alabama strategy, providing services in local, state, and federal campaigns to clients including governors, attorney generals, senators, legislators, congressmen, and mayors from across Alabama. John specializes in political and campaign strategy, communication planning, media training, producing audio, video, and web content, crisis management, legal communications, speech writing, policy research, promotions, publicity, events, and project management.
Wow. What a genius.
So how the hell do you miss this softball, Mr. Gray?
Yep.
March 15th, in a Japanese on Pearl Harbor attack, the Orange Beach City Council gets together and vote unanimously to create their own school district.
Yeah, but don't you like how they did it, Harry? It wasn't on the agenda, so they added it to the agenda hours before the council meeting and then voted on it. That's totally wrong. Absolutely wrong.
I'm just not glad. I'm glad I'm not getting $9,500 a month from the school board to be their political consultant. So here's something else that happened recently. So do you remember me raising hell about the redistricting and the fact that this District 33 over here in Mobile now comes and it's a Democrat over in Mobile that sits in that chair. And now her district is about 2/3 of Spanish Fort. All by design. You know why?
Knocked
to
out,
make sure that
any competition.
Knocked out any competition for the beer pong champion, Mr. Elliott. So do you know who Mitchell Sims is? I work with him down in Gulf Shores. He's a fireman. But the day he got appointed by the Baldwin County Commission to be our EMA director, he says, I'm honored that they got up early to come out and support me. Sim says, just before the vote, I'm a man of God and believe in honesty, truthfulness, transparency, and you can imagine the rest. So anyway, he was up against a very popular opponent. And, hey, man, we just white people to stuff, right? We just got him out of that district. So that brings us to my little candidacy and why I'm running and how what I know will help clean things up. So remember this series of articles by John Archibald out of Birmingham,
right.
Paul?
Right.
Brookside, Alabama. They're trolling social media, threatening people. So here's the latest. Brookside, 23 officers and towing companies sued for conspiracy over traffic stops.
Mm-hmm. Hang on, Summerdale.
Hang on, Baymanette.
Yep.
The dark root of policing for profit and what to do about it. So the Alabama House passed a bill, and I believe this is a little old. It's actually out of both houses, and it's sitting on the governor's desk waiting for a signature. And basically what they're saying is you can't have more than 30% of your, or is it, I want to say it's 30% of your revenues coming out of municipal court. And we see what the jail town, Baymanette, their fines and forfeitures went from $300,000 to $900,000. And I need to look at that as a percentage and do some math and see if they can keep those up there.
Well, that's a 200% increase.
And jail town, construction's ongoing, boys and girls. State Senator Greg Albritton proposes new plan for Alabama lottery, casinos, and sports betting. His little bill is creeping along. It squirted its way out of the Senate. And is sure to die a gruesome death in the House, I'm assured. Alabama is considering a couple of bills, one in the Senate. This is the Senate Bill 24. A companion bill in the House is being whittled on pretty feverishly right now, and it requires a parenting plan in all child custody cases, which is a great idea.
Very needed.
So, Paul, you've been watching what's going on in Ukraine, Putin's been called a war criminal for taking out civilian targets.
No, he is a war criminal. What's happened is over 10 million people have been displaced, and they can't shake the Russians can't get in there. Pardon me, the Russians can't get in there, and the Ukrainian fighters are just knocked out. 300-400 vehicles. They've stopped them in their tracks to coming any further on ground. So they're now Russia's throwing all these rockets and everything else to them and just laying the towns to rubble. But I just don't know where this is going. I don't know if people realize just how close we are to World War III. I mean, it could be at any moment overnight.
So do you agree the hawkish bipartisan people who are saying send planes and institute a no-fly zone are people who have never watched war games?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so
absolutely.
We're
those
definitely
are the same. You also hear that the oil crisis and the gas prices is caused by Ukraine. That's not true. Most of the problem with the gas and everything was during COVID. It was supply and demand. There was no demand, so the supply sunk. Then all of a sudden, the demand started coming back up. The supply wasn't there. Bang. Then you had Ukraine.
Okay, well, it doesn't really taking a third of the world's oil and gas off the market does not help the oil and gas crisis. I can assure you.
Renewable energy, that's where you're going. I mean, I don't know how many times people got to say it over and over again. It's right there in front of us.
Yeah, man, your generation did a great job on it, Paul. Please, let's move on. Mr. Zelensky is holding firm, and it looks like the people of Ukraine are digging in. They're going to fight to the last Ukrainian.
It's not going to go down for Russia at all, man. I mean, this is going to end up being a financial war in the end that brings down Russia, not the combat fighting.
Okay, well, just imagine if you had a bunch of people deployed and the plague hit again. So 79.7 million infected in the U.S. with 971,135 deaths. Good stuff.
Very close to 1 million.
So Paul, it's time for the Rip Report, and I want to drive just a little bit if I can. Upcoming election, the primary is May 24th. Runoff is June 21st, which would have nothing to do with me. And then the general election is November 8th. And, of course, you can find out anything you need to know or get you an absentee ballot by calling the circuit clerk at 937-0379 or going to www.alabamavotes.gov. You see all of the people who qualified in Baldwin County to run for office. Seems like we're light on one. Maybe that's off. Hadn't been updated. Of course, the reason I want to talk about all this is I want to talk a little bit about the people that are involved in this case you're about to tell us about, Paul. So our district attorney, Robert Wilters, is a career prosecutor and jurist dedicated to serving the public. 22 years serving as a judge in Baldwin County. Circuit court judge from 99 to 2015, presiding circuit court judge from 2013 to 15, district court judge from 93 to 98, former chief assistant district attorney, former FBI special agent, graduate of the University of Alabama, and graduate of Cumberland School of Law at Samford University. And then we have Sheriff Mack, who is walking in unopposed. One more time, Paul?
One more time.
No one can qualify to run against him.
Fix it.
Right. So Sheriff Hugh Mack was born in Escambia County and moved to Baldwin County when he was 6 months old. Sheriff Mack attended Faulkner State Community College and graduated with an associate's degree in criminal justice. While at Faulkner, he was a Student Government Association representative. He then attended and graduated from Troy with a bachelor's in criminal justice. He returned to Troy and got a master's in human resource management. Mack went on to work with the Department of Forensic Sciences in 1985 as a medical examiner field agent. He worked as a forensic investigator and was promoted to chief forensic investigator of the Mobile Laboratory. He holds a crime scene analyst certification by the International Association for Identification. Sheriff Mack was hired by the Baldwin County Sheriff's Office in 98 as a criminal investigator.
On a podcast. I got to call you back. Sorry about that.
Mack was hired by the Baldwin County Sheriff's Office in 1989 as a criminal investigator and was tasked with crime scene responsibilities. In 1995, he was promoted to the rank of lieutenant over the Criminal Investigation Division. Very important. In 2004, he was promoted to the rank of captain and designated the chief investigator of the Criminal Investigation Division. He has served on many task forces to include the U.S. Customs Blue Light Task Force, a U.S. Marshal Special Deputy, Baldwin County Major Crimes Unit Task Force, Child Abuse Task Force, and consultant with many other law enforcement agencies. Mack ran for sheriff in 2006 and was reelected in 2010, 2014, and 2018. Paul, you are on, my friend.
Well, this is the case of Murray Bubba Lawrence Jr. And back in 2003, when Mack was a lieutenant, and Mr. Wilters was a judge at that time. At the conclusion of this trial, Mack was promoted to captain and then became sheriff, where he has remained since then, after quite a bit of help from our past state senator Tripp Pittman, who helped rewrite qualifications which eliminated Mack's competition. Elliot must be taking lessons from him, don't you think? But anyway,
possible.
Murray Lawrence in May of 2003 was implicated in a murder of Brandon Hastings, a young man from Foley that seemed to be about as innocent as a person could be, and just a victim, wrong place, wrong time. But the Mr. Murray, Bubba, has been in jail since 2003. And his father is Murray Lawrence Sr. He has Booby Jack Tree Service, works out of Fairhope. And I met him in politics. He ran for city council, and I met him beforehand too. He was trying to get some things done in his neighborhood. which required him getting involved in politics. And of course, he found out very quick that in Fairhope, you can't get anything done unless you're in that club, which he is not. But anyway, Bubba's case came to us, Harry as well. I read the transcript, then Harry did. Then after Harry, probably 3-4 more other people did. We've been researching this since probably about 2.5 years. We have Rebecca Chambliss, who is an attorney out of Montgomery, is going to be the one that is writing the writ of habeas corpus and also trying to get us in front of the Innocence Program. Anyway, this last week, we have been working over 6 months trying to get these sites arranged. You can go to Deal with the Devil.
We're looking at the website live right now.
Right. Okay. You can go to dealwiththedevil.com. It's deal-with-the-devil.com, or Facebook, which is Deal with the Devil blog. On both of them, they'll take you to a petition site, and we ask you to sign the petition for him to get some review on this or another trial.
So can I give you my 2 minutes?
Yeah.
Over the years, my client and friend Paul Ripp has brought more than a few disturbing cases to my attention. Nothing prepared me for the outrage and ultimate disbelief as I read through this exhaustive transcript. The trial took over 2 weeks. You see, I'm one of the bad guys, and then I was unaware of how easy it was for an overzealous prosecutor, Mr. David Whetstone, an erratic sort who I've known since I was 16, a detective whose judgment led the state to pursue the theory of the crime. Huey Mack has been sheriff here for 4 terms, about to start his 5th, and former FBI agent prosecutor hanging judge, who I've known my entire life, about to serve his second 6-year term as our Baldwin County District Attorney. To lock up an innocent man on the word of a murderer. The law abides under appellate practice for a person who has been convicted to appeal on several grounds. One is a Rule 32 plea when your guilt was caused by ineffective counsel. I've spoken with Willie Huntley Jr., the defendant's trial counsel and former federal prosecutor for the Southern District of Alabama. After the state presented its case to the jury, Mr. Huntley, confident that the jury could not possibly find his client guilty based on the evidence, rested without putting on a defense. He has conceded that this was folly and would be grounds for such a plea. A handgun was introduced into evidence at the trial. It was improperly identified by the real killer, Jarius, as a different caliber, but he was corrected on the stand, of course. There were no shell casings, no gunshot residue, no prints on the handgun, nor any ballistics, bone or bullet fragments present in the remains of the head and torso. The neck was consumed by animals as it lay undiscovered in the heat for days, which led to the theory that the victim was shot through the neck. I cannot find any criminal defense attorney nor judge in Alabama who can explain a gun being entered into evidence without it being identified as a murder weapon by ballistics, chain of custody, or any physical evidence that he was killed by a firearm at all, much less this one in particular. You see, Dr. Paul Garrity has a bit of a reputation as a very competent and reliable medical examiner, not just in Mississippi, but along the entire Gulf Coast. He says that based on his examination of the organs, the victim died of asphyxiation by strangulation. That would account for abrasions, contusions, and limited bleeding that may lead a wild animal to feast on that portion of the body. Of course, Jarius tells us that the victim was shot at point-blank range with a pistol. They then loaded the victim in the trunk of his own car, presumably soaked in blood. At the conclusion of the trial, the court and the state are scrambling to get the trunk liner, where no blood was found, by the way, to the courthouse because this piece of evidence had never been produced and turned over to the defense in violation of the rules of criminal procedure. I could keep throwing rocks, but my arm is tired. I looked up Mr. Lawrence on the Home and Prison website and went with Mr. Ripp to see Cam Ward, who I worked with in the city of Alabaster for 7 years. He is currently the Director of Pardons and Paroles for the state of Alabama. Unfortunately, the defendant got life without the possibility of parole, but we did learn that Bubba has no tattoos, no known gang affiliations, and works in the prison ministry. In a system where the Crips, Blood, and Aryan Nation have more control over the place than the warden, Bubba is called upon to parlay the peace between such factions routinely. One of the very few people in this torture chamber of violence and rape that everyone trusts. I will continue to do whatever I can to draw attention to this case and the plight of a man that I am certain did not commit this crime. I have been so terribly ineffective at bringing this to the attention of the public that I've considered sending a care package, a rock hammer, and a poster of Rita Hayworth.
Wow. Well, that is a good summation on your part. And the thing that I just recently, we were talking about this, and I called a criminal attorney and I said, look, I think I know this, but I need you to tell me, and I told him about the gun and how this gun was introduced into the trial. And they had no ballistics, no bullets, no nothing, no fingerprints, nothing to tie that gun to the murder. Absolutely nothing. And how in the hell that could happen? And then,
except the eyewitness who was the real murderer, who made all this up. Right.
And also that's another point. Supposedly, you are not supposed to be able to be convicted of a crime if the only testimony against you is the other person that was in the crime with you. So, I mean, there's another point. But thirdly, and this is the one that gets me the most, is the timeline. There's no timeline set up by anybody, prosecutor, defense, assistant district attorneys, jury. Nobody sat down and did a timeline. However, they spoke through the trial of 2 weeks and established a timeline, which is in the transcript. And that's what we are working our timeline off of. And then the other thing, and I see Harry's got it up there, is experts DA maneuvers suggesting autopsy in Stephen Nodine case.
Yeah, do you mind if I do this real quick? So
yeah, go ahead.
So District Attorney Judy Newcomb was the state medical examiner said Steve Nodine's girlfriend shot herself in the head. Right?
Right.
Pretty plain and simple. Nodine's accusing him of shooting Angela Downs, a Gulf Shores real estate professional with whom he'd had an affair. Newcomb said testimony from Downs, who is not related to the victim, would supplement but not refute the autopsy. Newcomb declined to say how much her office is paying for the testimony. So anyway, they brought in an outside medical examiner, right?
Right.
And so Whetstone is retired. And so they ask him, is this unusual to bring in somebody from the outside? And he said, most of the time in my years, the Department of Forensic Sciences was able to do what we needed to be done. Former Ball County District Attorney David Whetstone said, an extra set of eyes can be useful in a case that hinges on forensic analysis. It would be rare, but it would not be beyond the pale, he said. It's unusual for that to happen, but it's not unprecedented. Whetstone, now an attorney in private practice in Baldwin County, said his last capital case he tried as DA involved similar circumstances. A forensic pathologist hired by the Jackson County Coroner's Office in Mississippi concluded that a Foley man whose body had been dumped near Gaucher in 2003 died as a result of strangulation. The pathologist, Paul McGarry, later testified under questioning from Whetstone that he could not rule out the possibility that the victim had been shot, seeing as there was no evidence of the point of strangulation. The jury convicted the defendant, Murray Bubba Lawrence Jr. I proved he was shot. I had to disprove the medical examiner. Whetstone said the body was too badly decomposed for a new autopsy, but he said he would have hired an outside expert if a new autopsy had been possible.
And let's look at those two things, Harry. I proved that he was shot. Okay. And I had to disprove the medical examiner. So that means that the prosecutor came up with his own theory, which was in dispute of the medical examiner
and all the other physical evidence of the crime.
The other physical evidence, and they went with Whetstone's say-so. Also, it says that Whetstone said the body was too badly decomposed. The body was found like 6th, I think the body 6th of May 03. I believe the body was found on 11 May 03. they could have done an autopsy on that body. Absolutely, they could have. There would have been no problem at all of doing it. They do autopsies.
Listen, man, Paul McGarry did an autopsy.
He did. They did too. You know, they did a provisional, and then they did the other one. And he says suffocation by strangulation. Now, up at the top, where he says that McGarry later testified that he could not rule out the gunshot wound, that was asked in a hypothetical way, if you remember as well. I do
remember.
You know, hypothetically. And he, you know, you ask somebody a question about, is it possible? Well, anything is possible. You know how they say that. So, but we're going to be diving into this case. There's 170 people on the petition right now. We're pushing to get this writ of habeas corpus done and reviewed by yourself, Harry, as well as some other people, and get that going. But if you follow the podcast and you follow the Deal with the Devil, you'll see our progress because we plan on tracking it as we go.
All right, so I got a new one for you, Paul. You ready?
Yep.
If you would not be forgotten as soon as you are dead and rotten, either write things worth reading or do things worth the writing.
The challenges of making a film about Benjamin Franklin are kind of endless. We kind of know he's on the $100 bill. We kind of know the kite and the lightning experiment. And then after that, it's fallen off. And so this whole film was, at least for us, revelation, and we hope for our audience.
He was interested in everything you could possibly know about all things knowable. So that makes him a perfect Ken Burns subject.
Franklin is endlessly interesting. He is the only founding father who evidently had a sense of humor.
This is the perfect moment to do a film about Ben Franklin. This is a moment when many of us want to reframe our founders and to think about them during their lifetimes, but also the way in which Ben Franklin translates in the 21st century.
He's a flawed man. He enslaves people in his own household and is very, very late, as far as I'm concerned, to the cause of abolition, but he does get there. And then he's the greatest diplomat in all of American history.
Not only does he invent lightning rods and Franklin stoves, he invented a way to unite the colonies. And so I think he's the quintessential American.
Our new Constitution is now established. Everything seems to promise it will be durable. But in this world, nothing is certain except death and taxes.
And he does all of this with a kind of wink. He knows his own foibles. He's trying to improve himself. And the example just comes down to us centuries later of what it's like to be a better American.
What say you, Mr. Rip?
Well, I'd say it's a good time for that too. And Ben and Ken Burns' shows are just absolutely fabulous. So it should be great. I mean, they do an immense amount of research on all of his documentaries.
All right. Well, this seems to be the podcast where we're going to get a copyright strike. So let's go for it.
Welcome back to the V, the voice of Alabama politics. Susan, I don't want to take too much time beating up on the Bentley-appointed Attorney General, Steve Marshall, because I hate wasting my breath on a loser. But anyway, turned this thing this week.
2018.
On Monday, Troy King, former Attorney General Troy King, who's running for Attorney General, he came out and held a press conference at 11:30, and we thought, what in the world are you holding a press conference at 8:30 in the morning?
8:30 in the morning.
On Monday. So it turns out, and he comes out and he says, where's Steve Marshall? Nice. Well, it turned out that at that very moment, Steve Marshall was at an exclusive golf outing in North Carolina where the Attorney General's Association, Republican Attorney General's Association, was having a $5,000 a plate breakfast in honor of Bentley appointee Steve Marshall.
Not incumbent.
They call him an incumbent.
But he's not. He's an appointee. He's an interim agent.
Yeah, here we call him
And
interim.
you know, everybody can afford to go see Steve Marshall at $5,000 a plate. You know,
Who
especially
the hell would go
people
see
that are-
Steve Marshall for $5,000?
I better have a lot of sausage and a lot of grits with that man.
You better give me a car.
Yeah.
I mean, what kind of breakfast gets served at 8:30 in the morning that is worth $5,000? Because I know Steve Marshall. He was appointed to his first job in government as district attorney by Don Siegelman. He was an Obama liberal until 2012. Excuse me, Josh.
Gave money to Obama.
Gave money
one
to
of
the
one of the
Democratic
brothers
Party.
until then. I don't know what happened.
Then he switches parties. He's all trumped up, Jonathan.
Oh, yeah.
And Bentley appoints him, which Bentley didn't even endorse Trump. He screamed against Trump.
He sure did.
I mean, how is this guy getting a $5,000 plate dinner?
I have no idea, but he's at the golf resort getting his $5,000 plate. Well, you know, and I'll say this: look, he's
More
up
like
there.
putt-putt.
You know what's amazing to me? He had to leave the state, go do this because that's where they were having their conference, which is great opportunity to have a lot of secrets up there that don't make their way back to Alabama. So that I'm sure they had a lot of campaign strategy meetings while they were up there. Bottom line is Troy King was here.
Yeah.
And he was bringing forth victims and people with past problems and touted the fact that he's been to over 50 parole hearings and he's not the Attorney General. They were just from convictions he did when he was the Attorney General. Honestly, in this race, you know, I think Troy King has got the upper hand because he's been there, done that.
And didn't Troy King say how many he'd seen Steve Marshall at?
2, I think it was.
2.
Yeah.
What is Steve?
Por favor.
What has Steve
two,
Marshall
please.
done? I mean, I asked the same question to Kay Ivey, but what has Steve Marshall done? Can anybody explain? I mean, just give me something. Give me a reason. What's the reason that I'm supposed to vote
Like Kay Ivey, he's shown up and taken credit for things he didn't do.
I don't even. I mean, you're sliding Kay Ivey.
I'm serious. I would like to know if there's somebody with the Steve Marshall campaign who, other than standing in the Oval Office with Trump that one time, what has he done?
Nothing. He has done absolutely. What he has done is dismantled the Special Prosecution Division. He has taken over $250,000 from BCA.
Mm-hmm.
He promised Governor Robert Bentley that he would prosecute or investigate the people who prosecuted Mike Hubbard.
And that's how he got the job.
And that's how he got the job. Those are the things that Steve Marshall's done.
Short memory, don't we?
Very short memory, Mr. Rip.
Very short memory. And the last 4 years, he's not done a damn thing other than talk about national politics, much more so than the state of Alabama and what needs to be done here.
Thank God for the FBI, or we'd never got that $4 million. Or thank God for Gabe Tynes. You see all these articles that he wrote that finally got the FBI's attention?
Right.
You know, and I don't know if y'all can see all the I thought the funny thing about her was when she got out of jail, she had on some Gucci sunglasses.
Oh, well,
that I'm sure were paid for by the water board ratepayers. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, congratulations also to Lanyap. They're in their 20th year. I'm sure when they started, they didn't know whether they were going to see 1 or 2, and here they are 20 years later. And I must say they are doing one hell of a good job. And talking about Pritchard, 2 articles are in the Lanyap this week. One's glossed over. Pritchard Water Board ignores theft allegations and the investigation. And so the board is now trying to quelch as much criticism as they can rather than embracing what the corruption was and looking into it. One of the motions that to be considered by Johnson Norwood added language to a motion that read, "We no longer allow interference from anyone regarding city council governance items which are exclusively those of the duly elected members of the council that is granted to us under the city charter." That sounds very much like Fairhope, where Councilman Brown explained that Councilman Brown who quit and left, but he and Burrell, who explained to the city attendees at a council meeting that they were the ones elected to the council meeting, and the people there that night in the council chamber were simply guests. and didn't really have anything to say about what they were doing because they were elected to make the decisions. Also in Lagniappe, there's also another article, and right dead on exactly what I'm talking about. Out of order, free speech issues questioned at Pritchard Water Board by Dale Leash. And in this situation, let me see if I see. This lady wanted to speak in Cherry, remember Cherry Door, who cited policy. Okay, what happened is a critic of the board wants to speak at the council meeting. At the water board meeting. However, the water board's rules state that if you are not a water board customer, that you're not entitled to speak at the meeting. However, this lady's name wasn't added simply because there's not enough room on there for two people to be on the two names to be on there. Now, let's see. However, Bailey added that the line between permissible actions by the board and a violation of Davies, that's the lady who wanted to speak, First Amendment rights, would come down to intent. Does the board restrict public comment to utility customers to keep meetings orderly and on topic, Bailey asked, or is it restricting non-customer speech because of its content? I would go with the latter. They don't want to hear you complain. That's why the corruption is so rampant and so completely out of hand.
Okay, so let me let me put you in the Wayback Machine. And to follow up on the conversation that they were having on the V at the time, so Troy King followed up and filed an ethics complaint against Steve Marshall, right?
Right.
And the Ethics Commission voted 3-2 that there was insufficient evidence that Attorney General Steve Marshall violated the state campaign finance law. Now, they don't give any explanation about what that would be, but Commissioner Beverly Brady offered a substantive motion saying that there were ample facts to show that Marshall had violated the law. Bradley's motion was rejected on a 3-2 vote. Brady and Commissioner Charles Price voted for it. Voting no were Ellis, John Plunk, and Commission Chairman Jerry Fielding. The Commission then voted to approve the Ellis motion on insufficient evidence on an identical 3-2 vote that closed the case. Anyway, I could go on, but it was related to a PAC-to-PAC transfer. Marshall's campaign received a total of $735,000 from who, Paul? The people who were throwing him that $5,000 a plate breakfast that morning.
That's right. That's right. And he has done not one damn thing since then, I tell you.
Hey, one more thing. After today's vote on King's complaint against Marshall, Ethics Commission Director Tom Albritton asked the commission to adopt an advisory opinion that said federal PACs are subject to state law, but the commission declined to adopt the opinion. That's clear as mud, ain't it?
Yeah, yep. So, ladies and gentlemen, the interpretation of that is that the Ethics Commission is protected by the Attorney General, and the Attorney General is protected by the Ethics Commission. So you can be sure that neither one of those are accountable for anything.
So let's talk about some fringe stuff. Remember Coastal Community College, when they consolidated, we found out that there was all that corruption going on, and the secondary school chancellor came in and shut it all down, fired all the people that knew about what was going on. Then Utility explains land transfer to Bay Minette City Attorney. Utility purchases property from trust tied to mayor, and new lawsuit targets ethics director will be reassigned to new judge. Of course, that was our case, and then, of course, there were several cases about there's soon to be a case, we understand, related to Mr. Albritton's self-dealing in that scholarship trust.
Let's pray there is. Because that's going to be the only accountability,
And like I said, I don't know if this has anything to do with me running for office or anything else, or your writ of mandamus, but last week the Bay Minette City Council voted to ratify and confirm the disposal of NBU property, which are lots 1 in 12, the re-subdivision of those where those two houses are located down at Steelwood. So those are gone.
Sure would be nice to know who made the money off them all these years and where's the money going when they sell it, you know? But I guess the public isn't entitled to that. Another thing, Harry, on Damn the Torpedoes, this goes pretty much to what we've been talking about all along, and one of the main reasons why Alabama is so corrupt. And that's Rob Holbert, the editor's commentary on Damn the Torpedoes, Ain't No Sunshine. And he's talking about the sunshine laws of Alabama. 10%. That's how often an open records request in Alabama is fulfilled, according to a 2020 study of how well each state shares information owned by the people. Now, if you remember, we have also talked about a case here that involved a boat accident November 22nd of last year. We've been calling Aaliyah and Fish and Game, and they have yet to provide us any type of even basic report on that.
Why would they?
But anyway, on this, he goes on to say, Rob goes on where recently on Twitter, it's so bad that recently on Twitter, a journalist frustrated with the state agency simply ignoring her information request compared our state's Open Record Act to a steaming pile of manure. Now, here's one of my sore points. Rob gets into further on in the article, where he says it even gets worse. Last year, the ability of the public to see police body camera footage in Alabama was dealt a massive blow when the state Supreme Court not only ruled against Lanyap's request to see video from the 2017 shooting of an unarmed motorist,
Senate
Jonathan
race,
Victor,
as
of
the
Baldwin
Republicans
County,
are trying to.
but in doing so, almost completely restricted the rights of anyone to see body camera footage, period. So if you've ever operated under the misguided notion that these expensive cameras are for transparency, think again. And folks, I went to the county commission meeting when they were approving $600,000 worth of body camera footage. And at the time, Sheriff Hoss Mack said this was going to lead to more transparency, more accountability. And as we now find out, Sheriff Mack was full of BS because he is not providing any of that information to the public, and we paid for the cameras. I think they ought to give us some money back for the cameras if that's the case. And then I only have one more, Harry, in Lanyap, and guess what it is? It's the $1 million swimming pool.
Yay!
This is diving in. The trial begins over the alleged fraudulent pool mortgage at Bellatone by Gabe Times. This is a subdivision that was supposed to be getting a swimming pool, and in the end, they didn't. It involves Clarence Burke's company, a separate company, LLC, Trey Cordy, and also the Homeowners Association that filed against, and also Mr. Delaney, D.H. Horton, and others in the 2020 claiming declaratory judgment, willful and reckless misrepresentation, false concealment and suppression of facts, breach of fiduciary duty, unjust enrichment, and conspiracy, among other counts. Testimony in the ongoing trial has since revealed that Delaney recently settled the lawsuit for $100,000, while attorneys for Burke and D.R. Horton are arguing the arrangement was agreeable while the statute of limitations has expired. So since they're trying to claim a statute of limitation exit on it. Delaney and Burke are both 43.5% owners in Baldwin County Sewer Service. And those of you out there wondering what the number one, planning can have all of the meetings that they want. But I think Harry said it very well. If you want to stop sprawl, then you stop Baldwin County Sewer from doing what they're doing because they're the ones contributing to the Baldwin County sprawl. And the Baldwin County Commission is sitting on their hands just waiting on this situation to explode. Mr. Burke and Baldwin County Sewer have been involved in one thing after another that has been corrupt, such as the straw man case.
Let's not leave out Commissioner Tucker Dorsey.
Oh yeah,
plot.
right. No, who is now campaigning for or backing Steve Carney for Joe Davis's seat in the county commission. So there's who not to vote for there, and that one is Steve Carney. You crazy if you're voting for him. Of course, you don't have much choice there in that. You've got three different people, and I think two are catalysts, and one is going to have two paychecks from the county. So I just, I can't see voting for anyone that is receiving two separate paychecks from the same county for a job. I just don't think that's right.
Well,
and if you remember, that's what happened with Karen Wilson and Fairhope. She refused to take the second salary, saying that she thought it was corrupt for her to do so. So she didn't. However, when the new mayor, Sherry Sullivan, they not only did they put her in the position, they gave her a raise.
Indeed.
Oh, Lord. Oh,
So,
I got one other thing, Harry.
Go for it.
I got to mention, this is about the triangle. Did you see where Gomesa funds are going to be given to Fairhope? $1 million of Gomesa funds for the triangle property, right?
That won't clear the brush.
That's correct. And this is a property that the city was forced to purchase at $8.25 million. There was $3 million worth of law fees. It's 11.5. So we're easily at about 14 million in on this property. They were going to do a track around it at one time. Then they were going to do a bicycle course. Then they were going to do an archery range. That would have been the most expensive archery range in the entire United States. And now they're saying that they're going to develop this as a park with a walking trail. Folks, I beg you, go out there and walk the triangle property. That is the most one singular piece of property that I have seen that the only thing you could do with it is develop it, because it's nothing. It's briars and twigs. They took all of the hardwood and all of the pines off of it years ago, and there's nothing there. It's a terrible, terrible piece of property to blow $1 million on. And you're right, Harry, $1 million ain't going to go very far, especially when you look at they're still dealing with the waterfront project in Fairhope, which is now well over a year old. And now I don't know what's going to happen there.
So, Paul, how do you feel?
They've been perpetuating that lie about buying the triangle for so long that they should call it, if they're going to make it a park, they should call it Triangle Liars Park.
So back to answering our original question, who is John Gray? Apparently he's a paid political consultant for Channel 5 News. And so let's see a little bit.
To decide who will take on incumbent Democrat Doug Jones come November. Right now with 80.
You know, Pete, we talked a lot about how Jeff Sessions' numbers were falling. And so I wouldn't say this is a surprise. We've talked about all along that if you go back 6-8 months ago, Jeff was in the high 40s, and then the next thing you know, you see him in the mid 40s, and then he's in the low 40s. And we talked about the high water mark. We talked about how people in the Gulf Coast know all about floods and waters and what that means. And this is exactly what we saw. Jeff Sessions' numbers started up here, and they have moved down like this. What's interesting about tonight is if you heard any of Jeff Sessions' speech back on WKRG, then you would have heard him talk about what a great guy Bradley Byrne is. And I'll bet you there's already a conversation taking place with Jeff Sessions trying to court Bradley Byrne into making an endorsement, because those South Alabama votes that went to Bradley Byrne are exactly what caused Jeff Sessions to be in second place. Now, the question is, are those people, A, going back out to vote? If they voted for Bradley, are they going to go vote for anybody else? And number two, what reason would anybody have at this point to go vote for Jeff?
Do you think he has all the answers?
No.
Yeah, I'd say let's circle back to the fact that Orange Beach just pulled a dawn raid on the people he's being paid to look out for politically. Major fail. Do you agree?
Well, yeah.
Maybe we should rethink that $120,000 a year we're paying those people.
You want to know who the next school district to pull out is going to be?
Fairhope.
Fairhope. They've been trying for years, man. That they see this is just what they're waiting on.
Blood in the water.
They're waiting on all the people that voted against it 3 times. They never garnered any more than 30%, but they're going to come right back to the trough again and try it.
Well, do you know why, Paul? Because the Baldwin County school system, besides Fairhope and Orange Beach and Gulf Shores, are all Title I schools. Do you know what that means? More than 50% of their students receive free lunch.
Mm-hmm.
So we really have an economics problem, and the fact that so if I took you back to 1915, how many people do you think lived in Orange Beach, Gulf Shores, and Foley?
Oh, my God.
Enough for one school, and you know who paid for that school? The industrialists and those type of people up in Bay Minette and in Daphne. Now that the shoe's on the other foot, they want to pull out and create their own school system is how I see it.
Right,
so,
that's exactly right.
So anyway, self-interest, greed, it'll harm us all, but thank God John Gray is up there making tons of money to completely fail. And like I said, it's probably time for him to find something else to do, maybe move back to the Orlando area, because once you get on my radar, pal, you're done.
Well, he is. There are board members with the Board of Education that have mentioned time and time again that they want him dropped from the payroll, and Eddie Tyler won't do it. So he's getting a check for what, $9,500 a month?
Looks like it. That's what.
Wow,
that's what
how many hours do you think he puts
shows.
in for that?
I don't know, but I mean, he's fast talking, man. You heard him.
I bet it's less than 40.
He almost had me convinced.
Well, no, paid political consultant tells you a lot.
Indeed.
You know.
The American identity.
Well, I'm going to leave you with an outro video while we're at this, and we will see you next time.
Identity begins when Benjamin Franklin knit the American colonies together.
Franklin is endlessly interesting.
Printer, scientist, revolutionary.
He is the only founding father who evidently had a sense of humor.
His vision is broader than the American Revolution.
The things that he spoke of, that he wrote about, had a certain amount of power.
He really was an American genius.
Benjamin Franklin starts Monday, April 4th on PBS and the PBS app.